Howdy, howdy, folks. When I'm recording this, it's Wednesday. When it gets released. But yes, this is another installment, that's what the word is, of A Love Letter To. Sorry it's a little bit later, but I have had a day. So yeah. So, today's A Love Letter To is Skirmish Wargames. Now, I'm a nerd, as you can probably tell, and wargaming is one of those things I've done for decades, years and years and years. I used to play against my brother when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and I've carried on throughout my life. Now, the thing is I transitioned over from doing big battle war games like Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 and Epic and, rank and flank style, lots and lots of units and lots of models, to finding that I much preferred skirmish war games. Now, the difference is generally that in a skirmish war game, you don't tend to have more than, say, 20 models per player. And often it's usually like campaign structured or objective structured, rather than just, I'm going to put my army on this side of the table, you put your army on this side of the table, and we just smash the shit out of each other, which a lot of larger war games can go to. So yeah, there's a million and two of them out there. And I often have had people say, like, what's the big deal about war games? And like, for me, skirmish war games, the big benefits is, one, it's cheaper. So to get started in, say, I don't know, Warhammer Underworlds will set you back like £30, and that will get you a box which contains a deck and the miniatures in order to play a single warband. Whereas like, to get a complete Age of Sigmar army now would be, well, depending on the faction you want to play and the size of game, it can be upwards of £1,000. But that's an outlier. You're looking more at the kind of 150 to 200-ish pounds for like a reasonable base army. Often the other thing is, often the turns are more interactive because there's less miniatures. You tend to find more interesting activation systems like you go, I go, or like moving individual things with activation systems and the chances of chaining activations and things like that. Whereas with larger games, it tends to be, I take my turn, you take your turn. So being the first person to act in a larger war game of that style becomes incredibly important, because there used to be an army in Warhammer 40,000 known as the Leaf Blower, which basically just shot your opponent's army to pieces on turn one. And it was known as the Leaf Blower because it, you just blow your opponent's army off the table. And so if you went first, you could remove 60% of your opponent's army before they could do anything. And as you can imagine, that's a bit of a feel bad. Whereas with a lot of these skirmish games, yeah, I might be able to remove one of your models on turn one, but will be my first activation, but then you get to act in response, and often I'll exposed, and there's a bit more brain. Not that large scale war games are stupid, but that they require a different kind of brain. Another big one is, quite often takes less time to play. So I can remember back in the day spending literally entire days in Games Workshop playing giant multiplayer battles that never really finished. Whereas with some miniature skirmish games, you can get through 2-3 battles in a night. Some of them, I mean, there's a couple I've played where you could potentially play a game in 20-30 minutes. So you imagine you could play multiple games in a night, which, I like doing the cool things my miniatures are supposed to do. So being able to have multiple games to potentially get more of those fuck yeah moments is a big thing for me. And also, to be blunt, it helps with bad players as well, because like, if you're playing against a crappy person at a games club or a shop, at least you're only trapped at the table for 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, rather than being stuck there for an entire afternoon as your opponent's being a complete knob. And the last thing I'm touching on for now is, often they're more granular. And what I mean by that is that because you have fewer models, and quite often these models have got tracked values or can gain experience or grow over time, you find that with this added granularity, you can kind of name your guys and, okay, this is Dave and this is Steve, and, and like, you get this feeling of kind of each model matters more, rather than you're like, oh, this is random tactical space marine number 726, throw him on the pile. You know, you have your dudes and you make them how you want, and you can invest a bit more time and a bit more effort into them. But skirmish war games are not for everyone, and they're not perfect. One of the problems is that some of them can be solvable, which basically means that there's like an optimum strategy, and once the community at large discovers this optimum strategy, it then becomes very difficult to kind of pull yourself away from either playing that strategy if you want to win, or playing a strategy that can spoiler that strategy. There was a game called Dark Age. Oh, this was a while ago. I think there's been a new edition since then. But one of the factions could take bangers, which were guys who had guns. It's like a post-apocalyptic system. And for a while, that was the best army. You just shot people, which then meant you had lots of mirror matches where people would turn up both with the same army and just stand behind rocks plinking at each other. And it made for not a very good game. So yeah, solvability is one issue. Another one is that often it lives and dies by its community, be it the local community or the ability to connect with the community and play games. Because, like, I mean, Magic the Gathering, people often complain that Magic is the only game that gets played anywhere. And the reason is because it's the game the most people play, so it's the game that the most people have decks for. So if I am going to Rando Game Shop number 57 in Bumfuckshire, it's a safer bet for me to put a Magic deck in my bag than it is to, say, put a Gold Edition Legend of the Five Rings classic deck in my bag. So being able to link with a community or having a local community is generally what determines whether or not a game lives or dies. And unfortunately, because games are generally an expensive endeavour, you find that communities tend to coalesce in a local area around a single game or games. So it might be that you really want to play Dystopian Wars, but your local community plays War Machine, and your choices are either to play War Machine or go fuck yourself. And I know there will be inevitably people going, well, then quit the community or find a new community. And it's like, well, sometimes you don't have that choice. Like, sometimes you don't have that option. You can try and grow a game, but quite often people who are heavily invested in something aren't going to want to transition to something new because, well, sunk cost fallacy and the fact they've invested in thing A. So keep that in mind when it comes to your new super hype game. Unless it has a very, very low cost barrier to entry, you may find that you just can't get players. Like, I love a game called Infinity, but no one in my local area plays it. I mean, I can go, well, pre-Elrona, I can go on the train for 45 minutes to a local place that plays it, but I'd much rather go to my normal game shop and play a pickup game. But that's what it is. And I mean, I can try and grow the community, but it is what it is. Another thing is the rules quality. Now, say what you like about, like, say, Wizards of the Coast and Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop and Asmodee and these big companies. They have departments to make sure things are readable and accessible, and they can play test things, and they can make sure that what they've got makes sense to the maximum number of people. There are war games out there. There are games out there done by these little independent studios that are, they're beautiful. The games are amazing. But the rulebook reads like a poorly translated Mahjong rulebook got jumped by the IKEA catalogue in the dark. I have played games, and I won't name them because I know that the person involved watches this, but I worked at a place where the designer for another game worked at, and I took the rulebook for the game that they had worked on, and I handed them the rulebook, and I said, okay, show me in the book how this rule works. And they started to explain the rule to me, and I was like, no, don't explain it to me. I understand how the rule works. I want you to go to that page in the rulebook and show me in the rulebook. And after they turned to like the 15th page to explain this rule, they were like, yeah, that rule was quite badly done, wasn't it? It was like, So like being aware that the rules as written and the rules as intended may diverge. So you might have to have erratas or check FAQs, or maybe even have someone who already understands how the game is played show you how the game is played. One other thing, it can kind of be a pro and a con. Quite often skirmish games live and die by their terrain. So if you want to play a game, you may have to invest in some terrain. There's a game called Carnival, which is set in like Renaissance Venice, and they do some amazing terrain. And having played it with like standard wargaming terrain, and having played it with the actual Carnival Venetian wargaming terrain, it adds to the game a huge amount when you've got nicely painted, set up, thematically appropriate terrain. So you may need to keep that in mind. Like, it's a pro in one way because you get to make friggin' cool terrain or buy terrain, but it's also a con in that it's another expense that people quite often don't say is an expense. They just go, yeah, you just need to buy 5 miniatures and a 4-foot by 4-foot table full of terrain. So just keep that in mind. So in regards to Skirmish Wargames, to give you an example of, so I keep all my crap up here, to give you an example of how storable they are, in this box I have, what's in you? This has got my Dreadball team, that's where my Necromunda went, my Necromunda models, and it has my Frostgrave. So that's in there. And then in here, we have, that is Warcry, and I think maybe Saga? Yeah, Saga, because I haven't finished building them yet. And then in this one, in case you're interested, these are from Wilco's. These are just little storage boxes. This is Ragnarok, Infinity, more Warcry. Yeah, so, and my Underworlds is up here somewhere as well. But the thing is like, within those 3 boxes, I had multiple systems, I had multiple forces. Potentially, I mean, there's enough to teach some games up there as well in these quite compact boxes, rather than like, I don't even know where my army case is right now, but it's about the size of that cardboard box behind me, which is an A4 cardboard box, to store my Dark Eldar in, because I've got troops and vehicles and characters and crap to go with it. So yeah, like games I play, you have Infinity, which is by a French, I believe they're French company called Corvus Belli. It's a post-singularity futuristic game where you've got like kind of, people say it's anime inspired, but I don't feel it's as anime inspired as people go on about, but like smooth lines, futuristic looking, power armor, stuff like that, and some other themes. But you've got multiple factions with very, very strong identities, with sub factions within them. Very interesting game. It does have issues with list construction being very, very important. Quite often, once you get into the game and start playing it kind of properly, if you don't make allowances for things like your opponent being camouflaged or being able to see through camouflage and things like that, you can potentially fall over. And it is also a game that punishes you quite heavily if you don't consider sightlines. But if you want like a tactical game with a small number of units, which has got a beautiful aesthetic, give Infinity a try. Brilliant. From Games Workshop, there is Warcry and Kill Team, which are the fantasy and Warhammer 40,000 futuristic, respectively, versions of their skirmish game. So in them, you make a small warband or a small squad of men, and you have kind of interactive games on quite a small board. Warcry, I feel, is the better game because it was made after Kill Team. Warcry uses its own unique system for rolling dice where you're trying to make doubles and triples and quadruples from the pool of dice you roll, and you apply them to activate different abilities, whereas Kill Team plays more like a more involved version of Warhammer 40,000 with some tweaks here and there. but it has a more robust campaign system in comparison to Warcry. I like them both. The nice thing about Warcry is that you can use miniatures from your Age of Sigmar army, not just the miniatures that are shipped out with the box. And Kill Team has the advantage that like you can just buy a squad box and ta-da, there you go, you've got your Kill Team. Like Imperial Guard, if you buy 2 boxes of Guardsmen, I think it's 2 boxes of Guardsmen, you basically have a full Kill Team of every description you could want. So yeah, that's quite nice. It has a lower barrier entry, but allows you to be within the Games Workshop IP, which can be quite important to people. Next one, once again from Games Workshop, is Necromunda. Necromunda is gang warfare on a planet which has been ravaged, and so everyone lives within hives, which are these colossal spire-like cities. The nobles live at the top. Normal people live in the middle, where like manufacturing and things like that happens, and then in the underhive, which is where all the scumbags live, are where gangs fight for territory and you know, and all that jazz. I really like it. It's a newer version of an older game. It's like a re-release remake. It's called Necromunda Underhive, whereas the original one was just called Necromunda, or Nucromunda, you'll sometimes hear it called. I play Vansar. I used to play Delac. I now play Vansar, which is the technological faction within the game. There's multiple houses of gangs. You've got Goliaths, who are big meaty guys. You've got Cawdor, who are religious zealots. You've got Escher, which are primarily female. You've got Delac, which wear trench coats and they're like secretive, sneaky guys. You've got Vansar, who all wear like cyber suits and they're very technical. You've got the Corpse Grinders Guild, who are not chaos, winky. You've got the Palatine Enforcers, who are the police. You've got Outlanders. You've got quite a number of factions, and they keep adding more factions, but not at too much of a breakneck pace. Great little game. Your guys individually level up and gain experience, and you build your gang and kind of carve out your territories. It's a good little game. It plays really well. It is kind of like older versions of Warhammer 40,000, but with some extra stuff stuck on. So I heartily recommend it. Gaslands is another one I play, where you literally get Hot Wheels cars and glue guns to them and race around doing like Death Race or Mad Max or whatever. It's by a company called Osprey. Well, yeah, Osprey Games publishes it. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant game. Ridiculously stupid. Having dune buggies full of high explosives crash into school buses, while helicopters with tank howitzers on them take pot shots. It's a fantastic game. It does suffer from there being like optimal builds, but the updated version, Gaslands Refueled, did help with that. So, I mean, hey, for just a fun game to play in an evening, which uses friggin' Hot Wheel cars, so you can customize them all how you like, it's top notch. In another theme of like top notch, interesting games, Burrows and Badgers, which is by a company called Oathsworn Games, and the miniatures are all animals. I have a warband of, somewhere around here, mice. So I have little mice, and they've got swords and shields and wizards and all that lot. And you can have badgers and foxes and rats and otters and ferrets and all kinds of British woodland critters. And that is another warband experience gaining type narrative game. Lovely system where when your character rolls, so your character rolls dice from d4s to d12s, and if you roll a maximum value, it's a perfect roll and you get a +7 to it. So my mice are crap. They mostly roll d4s, but I've only got 4 sides. I have a 1 in 4 chance. I effectively roll 1, 2, 3, or 11. So, you know, I'm perfectly happy to settle for 1, 2, 3 for a 1 in 4 chance of an 11. And so it means my little mouse warband is really like David and Goliath. I just run up to bulldogs and go, have you, and stab them. Great little game. The company as well, really responsive, produces fantastic miniatures that ship out seemingly near instantly. They're lovely at shows. I cannot recommend them more as people, as well as excellent games designers. There's Battletech. So Mech Warrior, big stompy robots. That was based off of a war game called Battletech. Now, there is a caveat with Battletech. Battletech is old and Battletech is slow. But if you have that kind of tactical brain that likes to count out exactly how someone moves and turns and, track ammo and heat and all these different variables, it is top notch. Like, the game has endured for so long because it works. And yeah, they've just recently started releasing new plastic miniatures. I think Clan Invasion just came out, which that introduces all of the clan mechs, who are like more powered up versions. There is more background than I could literally do a 4-hour video on the background of BattleTech and probably get half of it wrong. Yeah, fantastic if you're after a very, very crunchy, deep tactical game. But yeah, there's more. There's more and more and more and more. Just to quickly blast over some others, there's the Batman miniatures game where you play as Batman or his villains in Gotham City, trying to complete objectives and stuff. And you can have the Joker and Harley Quinn and all of that jazz. I used to have a Scarecrow warband, so you went around just scaring the shit out of people, which I really liked. I haven't played it for a while, but it's still a very good game. The same company, Night Models, do not Batman. They do Batman, yeah, but they also do Harry Potter. So if you want to do kind of themed Harry Potter games where you can choose your factions and you go around completing objectives, you can. That miniatures game exists. Go and enjoy it. There's Bushido, which I want to play more, but it recently had an update put out, and it is Samurai. It's like samurai and monks, and it's very, very Kurosawa movie Japanese with a supernatural bent. The miniatures are gorgeous. I don't know where my stack of them has gone, but they've recently started launching new starter sets and things like that. GCT Studios is the name of the company. All of this stuff, by the way, I'm going to link down below. And yeah, it is fantastic. I love the game. It has a level of tactical nuance that I hadn't found in other games when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. But I need to play the new edition to 100% say yay or nay. This actually is the game that I had the problem where my local community had no interest in it. So I got to play like 3 games of it, and that was it. If you like Star Wars, there's the X-Wing miniatures game, which is literally spaceships, dogfighting. Revolutionized the idea of dogfighting by using pre-planned maneuvers in a very small area. Fantastic game. You can pick up a starter set, which is an X-Wing versus 2 TIE fighters for like £30, and that will serve you for 40-50 games. And then if you can think of a Star Wars ship from current canon, it's probably out there. And then there's all kinds of weird and wonderful things you can do with it. Then there's Legions. If you want to do like ground-based stuff, you can have Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and separatists and the Senate and blah, 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 and all that lot. It's Star Wars. You can go pew 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 at each other, and it's friggin' Star Wars in a war game. Less skirmishy, more wargamey, but I thought people would want to know about it. There's Saga, if you like your wargaming historical, so you can be the Celts or the Romans or the Vikings or the Saracens or the Crusaders and stuff like that. The miniatures are generally very good, but you can use any historical miniatures. And Gripping Beast, the company that puts out Saga, has recently started putting out plastic starter sets. So I'm probably going to pick up one of those to replace my old Saga warband, which is really, really badly chipped and showing its age. So it uses battle boards, so you roll dice, and those dice you then apply to orders on your battle board. So like you might have a single icon needed for a particular order, but your like a big game-winning order might require 3 different symbols, and so there's kind of a tactical nuance in adapting to what you roll. Frostgrave is like a spiritual homage to a Games Workshop game called Mordheim, which was about delving through a ruined city in search of treasure and trying to avoid horrible beasties and stabbing the shit out of other warbands. In Frostgrave, you have a wizard, and he commands a warband of followers, and you go and do things. It's very, very objective based. It uses D20s. It can be quite swingy, which a lot of people dislike, but it's weird. Once you play it more, your brain kind of adapts to how its odds work, and you realise that the swinginess is just in the nature of the game, so you have to account for it. Yeah, another one, fantastic one. One problem though is it is a bit terrain heavy. But yeah, I will, like I said, I'll link everything down below, plus some extras, because I no doubt there'll be things I'll be thinking of while I'm typing up the description. And yeah, I heartily recommend you give any of the things I've mentioned a shot after Elrona is gone, or use a program like Tabletop Simulator to see what's out there and, you know, try and connect with the community, see what you can do. Yeah, so I am gmmoley. The next video will be on Saturday. It will be called Nostalgia Trippers, where I'm talking to someone about happy nostalgic memories from when they were, you know, from gaming. So yeah, have fun. Be awesome. Bye bye. If you support my Patreon, you'll help feed my fat cat. This picture is of my fat cat. Support my Patreon. Help feed my fat cat.